Good evening, Winchester. Welcome to Visual Radio Live. The views and opinions on Visual Radio are those of the host, Joe Viglione, and his guests, Anthony James, Frank Delastrita, and not necessarily those of the Winchester Community Access and Media Board of Directors, staff, members, people of Winchester, people of planet Earth, all known universes and dimensions. Hello, Anthony.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. Maybe we can call it a joint BCAT production. Richie Sarno's here from BCAT.
Indeed.
And Richie started with me on a Little Joe Cook special in Melrose. Mwah, Little Joe Cook, God bless you, rest in peace. Dear friend, wonderful, wonderful musician. I taped Little Joe at the Cantab one week, maybe 15 years ago. And I'm taping him like a whole set. And so I turn around, there's this beautiful mirror. I'm taping him in the mirror, so I have all that footage. But it was kind of cool to get the, the band and then get the mirror image of the band.
Great.
Because it was always hopping there. Did you ever go to the Cantab?
No.
Central Square, legendary club, right near the post office.
I've heard of it,
yeah. So you've been in many, many films, and we've got 2 books with you. You do art as well, correct?
Cheaper than therapy.
Is it really? Let's start off, though, with this book, which is from the University of Mississippi Press.
Yes.
I love university presses. They put out encyclopedic books. They really go nuts sometimes. So it's, I'm like really proud of you that you're on University of Mississippi. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, it was rather interesting because initially when I'd finished writing it and I tried to get agents to represent it, literary agents obviously, probably 8 or 9 of them, they all said exactly the same thing, which is we want to represent it, we know we can get it published, but we want you to take your mother's story out because it's the Hollywood stuff, but it also has my mother's story, which is rather heroic. They just wanted a Hollywood memoir. And then the vice president of one of the big publishing houses also read it and said exactly the same thing. So I just put it back in the drawer. And then a friend of mine named Richie Sarno said, what about a university press? And I said, well, they just publish their professors' books. And he said, no, that's not true. They do some really wonderful, wonderful books. But let me go online and see if I can narrow it down to a couple. So it's down the University of Illinois and the University Press of Mississippi. They just want a synopsis and they want a couple of chapters. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to send the whole manuscript. I'm going to tell them why it's been rejected by every single person. And if they still want to read it, fine. He said, all right, better than your drawer. So we sent it out. 2 months later, University Press of Mississippi, I get this letter. And the woman who wrote the letter, I didn't know at the time, was the head of the entire press. It was her choice what gets published or not. And she wrote me this wonderful letter, and she said, and I can't imagine it without your mother's story. I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing, and there it is.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I love University of Illinois, University of Kentucky. You know that Harvard and MIT have presses, and Berkeley has a press.
Yeah.
There are some wonderful books being made on the university circuit. Now, do they try to make this go out to the bestseller list, or are they more interested in film history?
They send it everywhere. As a matter of fact, they have distributors in Finland, in Asia, in all of Europe, the UK, Australia. It's really pretty impressive, their distribution process. And of course, they send out all the copies from everyone to the New York Times, to Wall Street, I mean, everywhere. So I was shocked because I had no idea that University Press had that kind of range. And there were wonderful people to work with, absolutely stunning people to work with.
Now, did they give you an in-house editor?
No, this woman, as I said, who was the head of, her name is Leela Salisbury. After she read it, she said, look, I like the structure of it. I like exactly the way it is. I'm not going to give you to an editor, but I have a couple of suggestions. And one was, perhaps you could enlarge on your mother's story. So again, I couldn't believe what I was thinking. I mean, what I was hearing.
It happens the way it's supposed to happen.
I suppose. I don't know. But the upshot finally is that it was a wonderful designer. Everyone who worked on it was just so open to any ideas, including the cover and the pictures. They're in the book. So it was. I really lucked out. Really, really lucked out.
Now, wouldn't you think university presses would have the students translate them into foreign languages? Wouldn't that be great for credit?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that's a wonderful idea.
They've got the students. The students are coming from all
Yeah,
over the world
yeah,
these days.
yeah, exactly.
Because
yeah.
you said Finland. I'm thinking, well, is it going to be in Finnish, if that's the language?
No, what they do, because I've gone somewhere in Japan, which you see the whole page is all in Japanese, but the commentary from the press is in English, and you can press a button and it translates the whole page into
On
English.
the internet.
Yes, exactly. So they carry the book, but it's not translated, obviously, but you can get it in Japan.
And where's the button in the book for me to translate? Oh, I have to read it in English.
You do.
Okay. But did you have fun writing it? Or was it work?
Well, the Hollywood stuff was fun. My mother's story was very difficult to write because it's a rather dark, although heroic story. It's rather tragic in places. But the whole thing was difficult to write because I'm not a writer. The only prose I've ever written was the text for that art book that I had given you earlier. Poetry, yes, I've been doing for a long time, but this was a one-time thing for me.
And there's beautiful pictures of your mother in here.
Thank you. Yeah.
And pictures of you when you're young and in some of the films. I mean, it's really very well done.
It is. They did a really lovely job. Again, I was stunned.
How'd you meet Richie Sarno?
Richie Sarno, there was a place in Arlington. It was called Movies on a Menu, I think, and they sold videotapes and et cetera. And I was there once, and Richie was there, and the owner introduced me, and he invited me to be on his show, and we became the closest of friends. As a matter of fact, Richie was the guy who kept badgering me to write the memoir. And I said, but I'm not a celebrity. No one's going to care about my life or what shows I was in. And he said, no, no. And he kept, so finally I thought, all right, I'm going to go sit down and write it just to stop him, just to shut him up. I'm going to write the memoir. And, but he was the one who exhorted me really to write it.
But Anthony, you have an incredible story. And my philosophy is that every person has a book.
Yes.
If not 10 books in them.
Yeah.
I mean, there are life experiences. You know, like last night, I'm watching Law and Order. And at midnight, Law and Order starts and they go, happy birthday. And it's my birthday. You know, it's midnight. I told my dad and he goes, that was for you. I go, yeah. And then they mentioned one of the names of my cats. We have 6 cats. So I just thought, you know, like, it's like the space aliens are invading the TV or something. But just little things like that are in everyone's life.
Right, here's the problem. The problem is everyone has a story to tell. And everyone has a very important story to tell.
Yes.
But just like in acting, you can put 5 actors in front of you, give them one line that's supposed to be said in anger, and all 5 can say them with the same exact depth of anger, and it can be honest emotion. But one of the 5 will be much more interesting to listen to and to watch. Why? Not because they're more believable, not because they're feeling it more deeply, but because of the way they express it. That's the hard part. Doesn't matter how honest it is. Doesn't matter how interesting it is.
The intangible.
It's how you express it that makes the difference.
The intangible of keeping it interesting.
And that could be style, it could be structure, it could be whatever. But that's the hard part.
But when you work with the director in 1967, In the Heat of the Night,
Yeah.
my God, Vanishing Point. I'm just going over some of Anthony's movies. Burnt Offerings, Taxi Driver.
No.
Texas Detour, sorry.
There you go. I wish I had been a taxi driver.
Yeah, I just saw it the other day. That's why I was like, probably going back to it. The Naked Gun 2.5. I'll tell you a funny Naked Gun story, then you tell me one. Remember Kirk Gowdy?
Yes, of course.
So I was producing up at WCGY, and Kirk Gowdy owned the station at the time, 1992. So Harvey Warfield was the DJ, major name in Boston radio at the time, 92. His son comes in, and he looks at Kirk Gowdy, and he goes, "You're the guy in Naked Gun." And Kurt looks at Harvey and goes, "All my years in radio, and I'm the guy." I mean, he's a great sportscaster, right? But
right.
the kids, so it was a wake-up call for Kurt that the new generation knew him not as the great sportcaster,
Exactly, yeah.
but from that moment in Naked Gun.
Yeah. Well, my little story was the first day that I met O.J. Simpson on the set.
Whoa.
Very charming fellow. The crew liked him. He was very, very, very lovely.
Would
fellow.
imagine.
He really, never in a million years would he expect to have happen what happened. But he said to me, he said, "I have to tell you a story." He said, "One night, I'm in Beverly Hills, in this hotel, and I'm making out with this girl near the window. And I see you walking down the street. And I say I stop what I'm doing, and I say to this woman, See that guy down there? He was the killer in the Heat of the Night. And later on, killer in the Heat of the Night.
Whoa.
Oh, what a dark irony that is.
Dark irony, but that's extraordinary that he recognized you too. From the window, you know, walking by.
Well, there's only one person who's 6'5", has a neck like a stack of dimes, and a touch of psychosis that comes through the night.
Well, you know, crimes of passion and probably some substance that looks like snow. Who knows what happens?
Yeah.
You know, but we'll never really know because no one's going to
talk.
talk.
So many things come together that you can't even find all of them to come together to make that moment happen. Move one little moment, a shower a little later than sooner, a car gets there sooner than late. All those things come together. Someone forgets their glasses, and something happens. Wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Of all these people you've been around, these magical people, do you feel any osmosis that, like, I picked that up from that person? Or do you think it's all subliminal, like the directors and the wardrobe people and the writers and the OJs and the Leslie Nielsens?
Well, I've always tended to be rather autonomous. And that was one interesting thing about Clint Eastwood's casting, because I worked on a film called High Plains Drifter back in '73, and then Unforgiven in '91, I guess, when we shot it. And I noticed that all the actors that he hires, they're all autonomous. He doesn't have to worry about their, he's not going to talk about character with you and, oh, why don't you do this with your wardrobe, or what if you had a pen? He has actors who do all of that. They come to the set, they change their lines, they can improvise, they can change their wardrobe, they come up with something more interesting than what the wardrobe person is giving you. And he just concentrates on the cinematic directing. That's just the way he's always been, it seems. And if he does have something to say to you, it'll be in a very nonchalant sort of way. It'll be at the donut stand. You might say, oh yeah, you know, in that scene where, yeah, well, you know, just, you know, kind of throw that away, and then you walk away. You've just been directed, you didn't know it. But the most brilliant moment, for me anyway, that I saw a director do was in Unforgiven. It was in the very beginning, where one of the prostitutes in my brothel gets cut up by the man. And I had just brought her over from Boston. Cost a lot of money. Now, who in the world is going to want her? So in that scene, I come into it. Gene Hackman is there as this very scary sheriff. And I begin to really go into this tirade about he better do something about this because who's going to want her, blah, blah, blah. And we rehearsed it. And Clint came over and he said, you know, Gene is a very scary person, as you know. I wouldn't be too strong with him because you understand he could turn on you. He could take you outside and bullwhip you to death, just like that. And I said to Clint, I said, do you know what it cost me to bring that woman all the way from Boston? And he got it. He realized that I did know that, but I was so upset that it overrode my better judgment. So he got it. So here's what he did. He said to Gene, look, when Anthony goes into this speech, turn your back. So that gave me a chance to do what I needed to do, and it was justifiable as far as Clint was concerned, and he made Gene stronger by turning his back, meaning what he has to say is stupid. You know, it's just indifferent to what I have to say. So that minimizes me in his eyes, and it justifies mine to continue my little tirade. And then when I go to see Gene in his house later on, I have a completely different color for the character, because now there's no tirade, and I'm very obsequious with him, and I watch everything that I say very carefully. So that was a brilliant, like that. He said, Gene, turn your back. I got to do what Clint understood I was doing, and it kept Gene in the frame that Clint wanted to keep him in, emotionally as well as visually. So that was a brilliant moment. He's a wonderful director.
Did you see Play Misty for Me?
I did, long time ago.
Yeah. Now, I love Eastwood. I especially love what he did with David Baldacci's book about the president there, Gene Hackman being the president.
Yes, yeah. I can't remember the title.
And you know, I just turned 60, so this Bluesheimer's keeps hitting me. Danny Klein calls it Bluesheimer's. And then there's the other one, Blood Work, which I love. But the David Baldacci is absolute power.
Yeah. Oh, right, yeah.
And delayed reaction, but at least it's still there.
Yeah.
Play Misty for Me, I thought was a bit clumsy, but I could see the brilliance in it. but he has become so fine. He's just like a Da Vinci.
Well, and also now he's in the same category as John Ford or Howard Hawks or other great directors, American
John
directors.
Huston.
John Huston. And I think Unforgiven was really a turning point for him.
Ah.
I really do, because it was the first time, I think, and only time that he's been nominated as an actor for Best Actor. Is that right? Certainly the first time. I don't know if he's nominated since. But it also was interesting because that film, at least to me, actually just deconstructs what Clint Eastwood contributed to violence in Westerns and in Dirty Harry. And it's sort of, well, this is cool, this is funny, this is romanticized. But in Unforgiven, it is completely dissipated into the pathetic notion of what violence really is, taking a person's life. And if you think about it, when the young kid who's always, oh, he's killed all these people, he didn't kill anybody. You can't even see, hardly. And he finally kills this guy in an outhouse. The door opens, he falls down, and you think how disgusting this is. Not by accident. All throughout that movie, you get this sense that violence is being deconstructed. And so interestingly, by a guy who was in so many films, from spaghetti westerns through the Dirty Harrys, through those other westerns that he did, American westerns, and he himself is now saying this is not what it's played up to be.
But Blood Work and Absolute Power are both very violent movies.
Yes, yes.
So I find them great filmmaking, so I watch them repeatedly. Yeah. Do you do that with films that your favorites? Do you watch them?
Yeah, I do, especially certain scenes.
We're talking to Anthony James, and his new book is called Acting My Face, a Memoir. Is there a website you have?
That I have, no, but it can be gotten on Amazon. It can be, it's all in the bookstores.
I just want to know if people can get information on it. Like, they can Google it in the University of Mississippi.
Yes, absolutely. They Google it, it'll come up.
Yeah.
It's in all the Barnes & Noble bookstores.
Well, we don't talk about that stuff here.
Oh, we don't?
No.
Oh.
No, we just talk about the history of it, and we just give the websites up.
Oh, okay.
We're public access TV.
Oh.
But that's okay. I cut you off, and that's my job. No, and I love film, and I'm so happy here. You know, our guests for the past 3-4 weeks have been all from Arlington.
Really?
Leland Stein from the Regent Theater.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Ron Levy, the author. I hope Richie knows Ron Levy. He was with B.B. King and Albert King. He has a book out now. And we have, I think, another Arlington guy coming in a couple of weeks. It's just Arlington month.
I'm a big blues fan.
All right, so you know Ron Levy?
No, but I'm just in general. I always have been.
So you got a neighbor, Ron Levy, who was with B.B. King and Albert King, and he was here, and he's just a great guy. We're going to have him back. You're always welcome back. These are great stories, and the door is open. And what I like to do is keep the revolving door. We'll have like lots of new guests coming through in June and July, but then it's always good to check back with you and see what's going on with the book. If you've done a tour, are you going to go to any of New England stores?
No, and they knew that from the outset. That
you don't want to go to Portland and New Hampshire?
Okay, if Richie drives me.
Richie will drive you. The Barnes & Noble up in, here's an idea. We should talk to the woman at Barnes & Noble. Dee is really nice. Get 4 or 5 authors, Richie, and have the authors have a panel up at the Barnes & Noble. It's so huge. That might be fun this summer.
Well, this is interesting. This is what happened because it's being carried by the Harvard book store. It's also Porter Square Books and a lot of other bookstores around here as well.
But and they do readings and signings.
Well,
and
no, but here's what I'm about to say: is that they knew the University Press knew that I wouldn't do readings only because I wouldn't be able to get through my mother's story, and I don't want to do it just the Hollywood stuff because that's not the book about. The most important part of the book for me is my mother's story. But here's what happened with Porter Square Books. They decided, along with the director of at the press, that they were going to have this professor who wrote a book on Marlon Brando that's coming out in June. And so we're going to have a conversation instead of a reading. She, with her book from Norton, and mine with mine, she was already has read mine, I read hers, and it's going to be next month. And we're just going to have a conversation.
And do you know the date?
Interesting idea. Yes, June the 24th, 7 o'clock, Porter Square Books.
Sounds like a lot of fun. What night is that?
I think it's a Tuesday.
Tuesday night, so maybe we can head over there. Star Trek The Next Generation, what one did you play in? 1988.
It was an episode that, I can't remember the title, but I played a Romulan commander.
Love it.
I had
That's-
the Mo wig, you know, the bangs and the pointed ears, and
You were the commander of the Romulan ship?
one of two commanders. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really good. So, Star Trek conventions would love to have you just from that
Yeah,
one.
I know.
You know,
I've never.
you don't like to.
Well, no, I'm a homebody.
I know the feeling. I really do. You know, the Big Valley 2 episodes. I mean, you're such a distinguished Hawaii Five-0, Mod Squad, Ironside. So, what was it like working with Raymond Burr?
Oh, very nice fellow. TV
Legend.
goes so fast. He was so good. Gunsmokes are fun, but I got to do a recurring character with an actor named Victor French. He's a terrific guy and a wonderful actor. And Barbara Stanwyck, of course, was on the Big Valley.
Yes.
And of course, I did a couple of films with Betty Davis, another one of the great old stars.
What did you do with Betty?
It was a Disney film called Return from Witch Mountain. Christopher Lee, Betty Davis, and I were the three villains.
I love Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
So you're a villain with Christopher Lee and Betty Davis?
Yeah, she played my aunt in the film.
My God, that is so distinguished. Christopher Lee and Betty Davis.
Yeah. They were great. And Betty Davis, it was 9 weeks, so I got a chance to really have a lot of wonderful talks with her. I really adored her. She was a wonderful person. And what she did, unbeknownst to me, was that she got me a solo show at the Disney Art Library. And I didn't even know she did that. After we were all done, I got a call from the library saying, Miss Davis suggested that we give you a show. So they gave me a show.
Did you ever run into Valerie Cares-Vinay?
No, unless visually I may have, but not.
She was the fifth monkey, so she was on a few weeks ago by phone. She's a dear friend of mine.
Uh-huh.
I knew her husband, Nick Vinay, who'd produced Jim Croce and Linda Ronstadt,
Yeah.
all these great people.
Yeah.
He was at Capitol Records A&R man and producer. So Nick and I were good friends, and then Nick was the first time anyone emailed me. His girlfriend emailed me and said, Nick is gone. And I'm like, gone? He died in the hospital. 1998, so it was the first time I ever got the news that a friend of mine had passed on the internet. This year, Valerie, his ex-wife, and I are now really good buddies. But it's just weird because she knew I knew Nick, but we never... The girlfriend is good friends with the ex-wife, and I'm good friends with the girlfriend who hooked me up with... So Valerie's on the phone about Betty Davis. I guess she was a stand-in for Betty Davis on Hush Hush, Sweet Charlotte. Everyone must leave the room except for Valerie. What an honor for you to work with.
Oh, she was because I was one of the few people she would allow in her dressing room and have these long conversations, not about acting, just about life in general. And she was just. And I remember one day I was arriving on the set and she was arriving on the set, and she looked like she didn't have a very good evening or something the night before. And I said, Miss Davis, are you okay? And she said, yes, I'm okay. I'm a professional. I do not bring my troubles to the set.
Love it.
She was the first one there after lunch, first one there in the morning. Barbara Stanwyck, same thing. There was no messing around. She was there. She was there on the dot.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, she was, but very sweet. Really, really, a very, very warm, sweet person.
Well, two of my guests were chosen by Betty Davis. I mean, she liked two of my guests a lot, so that means something. We picked the right guests, right? I'm just being funny. But I'm noticing something here with your resume, that many of the TV shows you appeared in are now becoming movies.
Yeah, it's true.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, a lot of them, yeah.
Mod Squad,
Yeah. Hawaii
SWAT,
Five-0.
Hawaii Five-0, Charlie's Angels.
Yep.
But even like take Ironside, which was reborn on TV.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting thing. Quincy M.E. Was it? Oh, V. You were in V.
Uh-huh.
What was that like? Because science fiction.
Yeah. I just had to wear special makeup. That's all I can
Also,
tell
you were an alien?
Yes, I was the guy who, when you pull away, there's like snake skin or something under the that kind of thing. So
I like the original V.
I don't think I saw it.
Well, you were probably in the original V.
Well,
which
yeah,
was,
one episode. I just guest starred on.
Yeah, but
one
1984,
Yeah.
because then they redid it,
episode.
and
Oh, they did. Oh, I didn't know.
Sci-Fi Channel, and they get so
Oh.
glossy. It's like the Battlestar Galactica. The original was simple. The new one kind of lost me. I know people loved it. It got a cult following, but science fiction is very difficult to write. The original Star Trek, to me,
Yeah.
had the core of what science fiction needed. The great writers, Harlan Ellison, Robert Bloch.
Yeah.
So, I like talking film. I mean, we're talking about your book, but I like digressing on the show. The
Sure.
subtitle's digression. So, here's what I really had trouble with Star Trek. The Wrath of Khan is so great. Why didn't they redo some of the premiere episodes?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Return to Talos 4. More Tribble Trouble.
Yeah.
But people love the familiar, and when these new science fiction writers are trying to come up with something different, the Borg was great. The Borg are a great villain. Really, really explosive and compelling as villain, and you need a great villain. The Borg are it. But oftentimes a lot of stuff gets lost, and Deep Space Nine, and as it went on, I found that it just got convoluted.
Well, you know, for me, I've never been that drawn to science fiction. I'll tell you why. I think the strangest planet that you can land on is the human heart. There are more monsters and more bizarre things going on, more creatures that come back and do all sorts of crazy things than anything you could come up with in science fiction.
The space aliens told me why we're here.
Oh, tell me.
Think about it. What does the human race contribute? I mean, you contribute great art, language of the heart. You know, you contribute great art. But what do humans really contribute to the universe? We're not the smartest. We're not the stupidest. But we're pretty stupid. We are a perpetual reality TV series. And the aliens and the people from other dimensions, we are the most amazingly dumb for smart. We're smart creatures that really act dumb. And they just can't get enough of us. We crucify people,
Well, let me put it this way, as far as I'm concerned. If I were dictator of the world, no one would leave this planet. Are you serious? To go to other planets and do to those planets what we've done here? Never would I let them leave this planet.
One of the most stupid things we've ever done. Instead of going to war in Iraq, you got the Mir spaceship, you got the Mir space station. You grab 30 countries that are all like-minded and find a way to move it slowly to the moon and plant it there so these hundreds of millions of dollars in technology don't burn up over the atmosphere. So we have people starving in Biafra, and we burn up $200 million, and I don't get it.
Well, the problem is if you did what you're suggesting, you'd have to move everyone from this planet.
But I'm actually being serious.
Well, and so am I. We as a species are inherently, according to our words of good and evil, evil. We have done the worst possible things, not only to each other, but to the planet itself.
Great theme.
Why should we move everybody there?
Well,
and leave this to the rabbits.
Okay, that's
they take better care of it than we will.
My thought is,
you're an optimist. I'm not.
Well, there's in science fiction there's a theme called tipping point.
Yeah.
And you know the tipping point?
Yeah, I don't. Yes.
Yeah. So when a race reaches that point where they either blow themselves up or they get to the next level where they're actually benevolent, they take care of the animals, they don't eat them, they don't persecute them. And had we moved this Mir space station and all this junk around planet Earth to the moon, you now have a wonderful junkyard of computers and metal. In case you do start going there when you want to go to Mars, you now have all this stuff there, and you're not beating each other up on Earth because you're all working together to get the space junk moved.
But why would you think that would ever happen? There's no precedent throughout the entire history of the world.
Tipping point.
But there's no precedent about a tipping point.
Tipping point, we have to reach it at some point. We're going to reach a point where we're going to, there's Mother Teresa and there's Hitler.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Mother Teresas of the world will.
Well, not if you ask Christopher Hitchens.
Okay. So you're saying she had a dark side?
No, I'm saying he said she had a dark side.
Okay.
I don't want to. I'm leaving it all in his hands.
One of my guests, Gene Landrum, wrote The 8 Keys to Greatness. It's probably the only book that has Mother Teresa and Hitler, because he shows where the manic side of these individuals made them very famous. And he didn't judge whether it was total evil like Hitler or someone being good like Mother Teresa. He just identified the traits that made them push themselves to the forefront.
Yes, but what are the good traits of the Spanish Inquisition? What are the good traits of all the priests who went to the jungles and tortured Indians into believing something other than the tree god? I'm just saying it plays out in every possible way. Under the best of auspices, it turns terribly wrong. Terribly wrong. And that has never changed, and it never will, because fish do what fish do, and we do what we do, and we always will.
We're having a nice conversation here. There's
It's
some
all your
good
fault
people.
too, isn't it?
No, it's Richie's fault, but there's Joe LaRocca's fault. Thank you, Joe LaRocca, for a wonderful job directing tonight. We have a professional filmmaker directing the show for a professional film star. And now, twice author?
Well, this is about paintings, and I personally didn't want to write a text for that, but the publisher insisted. But the old poems are old poems, that's okay. But it's really about the visual language.
So Journey Editions from Tokyo and Boston. How did this come about? And what year?
This came out in 1994, so about 20 years old. Someone that I worked with on a film said that he had a couple of friends who were putting together a book called Actors as Artists. And it was a book of 77 actors who also painted. And that included people like Katharine Hepburn, Robert Redford, Anthony Quinn, Henry Fonda, all these you never would have known who also painted. And it did so well that decided to do a few solo books. And for whatever reason, they decided to do one on my work as well.
For whatever reason, your work is beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
It's absolutely beautiful. I'm so honored. What a birthday gift. This is mine, right?
It is yours.
Oh, thank you. This is such a gift.
But here's my qualification. The quality of the giving is more important than the quality of the gift. Because even if someone hates the gift, it doesn't change the source, the quality of the source. So no matter what you think of it, it comes from a good place.
Oh, no, a gift has to be good or I get really angry. That's not true, but we're trying to be funny here, too, on visual radio. It is 8:31, 8:32, we're having fun. I love the old Oz movies.
Yeah.
The Frank L. Baum did them, you know, silent.
Yeah.
And it's amazing with the fame of Judy Garland and that Wizard of Oz. Joe and I had interviewed the director of Orlok, the Vampire in 3D. I don't know why it was in my car, but there it is. So someone took the original Nosferatu and made a 3D version.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
Isn't that cool? So you could take public domain and kind of...
yeah, I had no idea.
I mean, it's public domain, so...
Did you see the Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski?
No.
As Nosferatu?
Was it recent?
No, this was many years ago with Isabelle Adjani, the French actress.
No.
God, it was quite extraordinary. German film.
Beauty and the Beast. Now, which Beauty? Was that the TV show?
Uh-huh.
I love that show.
Yeah. It was the actress ended up in Terminator or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, I think she did Terminator, and then she got Beauty and the Beast.
Oh,
and then
that
she
came
did
afterwards.
Terminator 2.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Then she married James Cameron. Then she divorced James. He ends up with his actresses, and it becomes very costly for alimony payments. But with billions, I mean, you know, he's got. I go to boxofficemojo.com. Do you go there?
No.
Oh, I have fun looking at what the films like Spider-Man. They're saying the headline for Box Office Mojo: Spider-Man is Spider-Man fatigue sets in. It's made $400 million in like 10 days. How is that fatigue?
Yeah.
It's doubled its money like in 10 days because of Europe, and they said, well, Europe loves it, but it did some ridiculous amount of money here, like 180 million in 10 days. Okay. I mean, how's that fatigue? Yeah. Is it a great movie? It's an okay movie. It's something to do. It's fun. I thought Jamie Foxx was really kind of stiff, like Richard Pryor in that Superman movie.
I haven't seen it because remember the
Science fiction
planet to ever land on is the.
Sorry. So tell me a story out of here that you do like. I ask my authors to read, but if you don't want to read from it, you don't have to.
No, I'd rather not. But I will tell you a story.
Yeah.
From Gunsmoke.
Cool.
With Victor French. It was an episode in which Victor French is the head of an outlaw band. I was his right-hand man. And the climax of the whole episode is that Dodge City, Matt Dillon and Festus and Doc and Kitty, all of it, they have one of our men in jail. So the end of the episode is we're coming into Dodge City with torches on horseback to burn down Dodge unless they let our man out of prison. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but Dodge City was inside a soundstage. The entire town was inside a soundstage 3, CBS Studio Center. They could change the sky, it could rain, it could snow, it didn't matter what it was. Every hotel, every restaurant, every bar, down to the spoon in the drawer, it was a complete town for 20 years. So this shot was our appearing down the street. Now, what you see from one end of the street is the director with the crew, all the stars, the townsfolk. This is the big climax. And we're supposed to come around the corner, the far edge of the street, very slowly, menacingly, with the torches, and we stop in front of Matt, and we have this, and then there's a big shootout. Of course, we lose. But here's what happens. I never did well with horses. They always knew that I was terrified, and I didn't know that they knew. So we rehearse it, and that's fine. And we can go slowly, so that's fine. Slow is good for me. Now they start lighting the torches for the take, and we're all jammed around the corner at the far end. Now the horses start getting very nervous because the torches are being lit. And I'm near the front with Victor. And as they get close to my horse starts getting really nervous and takes off. Now, the director has not said anything. They're waiting for the director action. So what they all see is all of a sudden they see me by myself come around the corner at the edge of town with a torch and just galloping down the street. And I'm so panicked that I'm yelling, grab him, grab him, grab him. And I'm supposed to be someone who lives in the saddle. And in my panic, I have not noticed that my torch has tilted forward and set the horse's ear on fire.
The poor thing.
Yes, and I'm an animal lover. So now what they see is this tough, sadistic outlaw, the ear is on fire, and yelling for somebody to stop his horse because the ear is on fire, and he's terrified. And the wranglers run out, they grab the horse, put the ear out, tiny little curl of smoke goes into the heavens, and there's dead silence. No one can believe what they've just seen. And the director looks at the ground, he looks up and he says, okay, one more time. Take me back with the horse, and we did it, thanks to a horse who didn't hold a grudge.
I thought they would have used the scene with the horse.
They didn't shoot it. I mean, that was they didn't even say action yet. They were lighting the torches. Now, segue to this, many years later, get a call from Clint Eastwood's office for Unforgiven.
Ah,
and
because of that?
What?
Because of that?
No. I think laterally, like you do. So here's what happens. The agent called him and says, oh, Clint Eastwood, his office, they want you for a part up in Calgary, blah, blah, blah. It's a good part. And here's my first question. Is it a Western? And I said, well, I think so. I said, do I have to ride? He said, well, I don't know, because I remember High Plains Drifter. And I said, will you please find out? So a couple days later, my agent calls and says, well, Clint said you don't have to ride, but you do have to walk. So I said, okay, I can handle that. I go up to Calgary, I get the script, and in one scene where I go out to meet Gene Hackman at his house, the script says he rides up, dismounts, goes into the yard, talks with Little Bill, goes back, gets on his horse, and rides out. So I go up to Clint, and I said, what's
Stuntman.
this? What's this? What's this? He said, no. We're going to start it with you already off the horse, and you walk into the yard. When you leave, before you get on, we'll cut. That's all. Oh, that's great. So we rehearse it. So now we're doing the take. Sure enough, I start off the horse, go into the yard, have the scene with Gene Hackman, finish, go back to the horse, and there's no cut. So I start adjusting the stirrups. Nobody says cut. Start adjusting the saddle. Nobody says cut. I start petting the horse. Nobody says cut. So I walk back into there. I said, what do I have to do to get a cut? And everybody starts laughing. It was a big setup by Clint.
Oh.
See what I would do.
That's
I
funny.
was petting the horse.
You almost answered my next question, which was the one with Matt Dillon was in California, of course, on the soundstage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In L.A. at what studio?
CBS Studio Center in the Valley.
Okay, and then you went to Calgary. How many set locations do you think you've been on, like around different states and countries?
Oh gosh, not countries, fortunately.
Well, Canada.
Unless you want.
Calgary.
Yeah, okay, Canada, yes.
You didn't go to Mexico?
No, I went to New Mexico.
Close.
It was close. Well, quite a few. I don't know. We're talking almost 60 television shows and 30
Can you do Florida or New York?
Yeah, all around.
Pennsylvania's a big one.
Natchez, Mississippi.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of very interesting little towns.
Oh, so the Mississippi Press has it, you were in Mississippi. What was it, Matches? You were in Mississippi. What was the film of it?
Oh, in Natchez. Gosh, I can't remember which film it was, but it was in Natchez, Mississippi. And of course, Louisiana, all the different states.
So
As a matter of fact, In the Heat of the Night was not shot in the South; it was shot in Belleville, Illinois.
Ah,
Yeah.
wherever the tax breaks are.
No, it's just that people don't realize that when that film was made, we were in the middle of almost a race war. There were race riots going on. They wouldn't dare take Sidney Poitier down to the South.
Oh.
Yeah, and when of course I went to a screening, but I also went to Grauman's Chinese to see it with an audience, and of course it was a huge hit. It was a critical and commercial. The lines were going down the block, and there's a scene in it where Sidney Poitier is talking with this big white baron type who he hopes is the killer, just so he can get this guy, and the guy slaps Poitier. And Poitier slaps him back in a second. Doesn't even no hesitation. The entire audience, you could hear this gasp. That's how powerful that moment was. You don't get that now. You see it on TCM. It doesn't. But it was an extraordinary film. And remember, it won Best Picture against Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and I forgot what other film.
Those are like four powerful films right there.
Bonnie and Clyde, oh, that was a big deal.
Just watched it again the other night.
Yeah. That was a very innovative film.
And it holds up. I mean, Faye Dunaway's great.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is great. And I remember, the Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde, just hearing her read the poem.
Yeah.
It's great filmmaking.
Yeah. So anyway, The Heat of the Night ended up winning against those films, and they were terrific films. And it still holds up.
And that was your first?
Yeah, that was my very first film, yeah.
So how'd you get into the biz?
Well, when I graduated high school in 1960 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, my mother and I were each other's only family. My father died when I was 8, and I was an only child, so we just had each other as family. And so I graduated, it was summer, and she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, maybe go to Hollywood and try to get into film. I said, okay. We sold whatever we had, took 3 suitcases, whatever we owned, $200, a copy of Modern Screen magazine, and my mother's Greek accent, and we took a bus and went to a train which took us 3,000 miles to Los Angeles. We get off at Union Station, and we have no idea where to go. And my mother said, we'll go to the Greek Orthodox Church. We went to the Greek Orthodox Church, got an apartment a couple blocks away, and 6 years later, it was in the Heat of the Night.
Amazing story.
Yeah.
Now, you could do the Anthony James travel guide and go with photos from every film from different locations, and then with all the actors and directors that you've been associated with. I think that would be an intriguing sequel. I'm serious. So, like, the adventures of where you went, like starting, you landed in Hollywood, and then all the places you went to.
I think this is the one and only.
Okay.
Although I did have a rather strange notion of a sequel. I don't know if I can say this.
Is it risque?
Slightly. No, not even risque. I was going to call it Acting My Ass, and it would have the same cover. What do you think?
Well, Connie Chung, it'll be just between me and you.
No,
and not the world. They won't hear it.
No, that's it. That's my memoir.
Who's Connie Chung talking to when she did that? Was it Monica or was it Barbara Bush? I forget.
I don't know. I don't know.
Barbara Bush. Thank you, Richie.
Thank you, Richie.
So we got to have you back because there's so much more I want to talk to you about, and I interjected too much, as usual. But it's my show. I can do that.
It's a give and take. What makes a great interview are the questions asked. And the commentary, and you did wonderful. Obviously, you've done this a long time.
We could have a couple hours. I mean, this would be great. The idea for this show was to be a prototype for an overnight show going from midnight to 6 in the morning. And then if we needed an hour break, we'd just play Mick Taylor of the Rolling Stones on visual radio and let it roll, an old tape, you know. And then we go have dinner, and then at 3 in the morning, come back at 4 and finish from 4 to 6. I figured with the information superhighway, I was working for a company that created PBS specials.
Yeah.
So that was my concept. Well, let me do a public access show where we can do the overnight. Well, almost 20 years later, I'm still... but thanks to the wonderful WinCam people, I'm doing Thursday nights. It's thanks to Joe LaRocca. And you have been now directed by Joe LaRocca.
I am gratified, honored, and...
So you got to put that at the filmography here. You got to, like, from 1991, 2014, Joe LaRocca. Final question is, why did you stop?
I retired 20 years ago because I didn't really enjoy it that much. And I was so fortunate to be able to take care of my mother's household and my own as an actor, and I got a chance to do all my painting and writing some poems and, when I wasn't working. But I have to tell you one very quick thing. My mother had never been on a movie set. I took her on the In Heat of the Night movie set. She loved Rod Steiger. She loved Sidney Poitier. Now here's what happened. I bring Mr. Poitier over, and she says to him in a Greek accent, "Oh, Mr. Poitier, you know, you are the more handsome in the real life than in the movies." And he says, "Oh, thank you." And he walks away. Then I bring Rod Steiger over, and she says, "Oh, Mr. Steiger, you know, you look the more younger in the real life than you do in the movies." So she was very diplomatic. She knew exactly what they wanted to do, and they all found her so charming.
That's a
great moment.
Lovely story. Yeah. I'm so glad your mom got to see you in this magnificent Academy Award-winning movie.
Yeah, yeah. She died 6 years ago, so
I'm sorry.
She was there the whole. She was 94, and no illnesses or anything. Her body just wound down and just stopped. Yeah.
But she got to live this with you, and that's amazing.
She did, yeah, she did.
If you don't mind, we're going to talk to. We can just. So there's going to be a website for the University of Mississippi, and people can just Google Anthony James, acting my face, a memoir.
Yep.
Hollywood Legend series, and it's University Press of Mississippi. So go into Google, Jackson, Mississippi, and there'll be the webpage there, and then you can read more about Anthony James' wonderful Acting My Face memoir. Now, what I'd like to do, and Richie can be in on this, we have Frank Imbragamo, an actor, Lisa Kavanaugh, and Frank and Lisa will both on my show, and you. So, and maybe Gail Jackson. Maybe we could have a panel and do a 2-hour visual radio talking about life in film, because
my pleasure.
I think it'd be fun to get the four of you together, and you know,
I'm there.
Hey, now Frank Dell'Ostrito is coming to Arlington in June 26th. He's going to be here. He's got a book on Bela Lugosi. He's got a brand new book on film. It's his third. So he's going to lecture, I think, at the Regent Theater.
Oh.
So we'll have to have you there. We'll invite you. We'll invite Richie.
Great.
You'll be on our guest list. But Dell'Ostrito's a really fun man. We're going to talk to him right now about the movie on tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Oh, and I got to tell everyone this. Reeling comes on. A film show comes on after this show. Last night, the Reeling.
Oh, Frank Dell'Ostrito.
Hey, Frank. Anthony James from In the Heat of the Night is here with us.
All right. Well, hello, Anthony James.
Good evening.
He can hear us through our mics. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, that is amazing.
Technology. But Anthony has a book out, Acting My Face. He lives in the town where you're going to give your lecture if we do it at the theater.
Okay, and that is not Medford, I guess, huh?
That's Arlington. The Regent Theater is in Arlington.
Okay.
And I was just saying to Anthony, the show that follows us tonight, Frank, is Reeling. And I was actually at Malden Access TV last night just to drop my show off. And the Reeling people were there. I've been trying to get them on the show here. Because they follow my show. They should, you know, but they're so busy working and stuff, they just can't make time for Thursday nights. I'll have to do a studio show with them. But it's just kind of intriguing. A movie show follows ours. And tomorrow night's movie is what, Frank?
Black Dragons, March 1942. It maybe is the first movie about the war that was started filming after Pearl Harbor and came out in March. So it's drenched in the war atmosphere, but it's really a tale of revenge, and most of it takes place in Washington, D.C. And I won't spoil the plot, but basically you'll find out early if you watch it that Bela Lugosi, who is the lead, his character is there to settle some old scores, and they weave the Pearl Harbor and the war with Japan on it. You'll hear the word Jap a lot in it, and so it's a poverty row, and I got to say, when I watch these poverty rows, I always feel admiration for the actors or the directors who are working under such constraints. Usually the scripts aren't very well thought out. There's a lot of improbability and a lot of things you just don't buy, and this movie certainly has its share of those. But I think Lugosi pulls off a couple of good touches, and so does the director, William Nye. And again, you got to keep in mind, these movies might be filmed in a week, and which is why when television came in about 10 years after this movie came out, a lot of low-budget filmmakers moved right into TV because churning out something in a week was no challenge. That they had done that, and I hope you have a good print of it because a lot of the times you get these old poverty row movies, but the preservation hasn't been very good. And so I have two prints of it to look at. One was pretty good and one was pretty shadowy. So I hope you're able to give them a good print. William Nye, the director, I'm not sure of this. I have to research this because I just noticed this. He may be the only director who can say he directed Lugosi in movies, he directed Karloff in movies, and he directed Lon Chaney Sr., the silent screen star, in a movie. And that movie was Mr. Wu, and Mr. Wu was played by Lon Chaney Sr. And there is a scene in there I'll never forget. And I won't divert here because I know we haven't got all the time in the world. But it was quite effective. And so this man, when he had a budget, could make a good movie. And there are some nice directorial touches in here, but they're kind of fighting the low budget and the tight schedule. It's just something they had to put up with. And quite frankly, the script that needs a little more work.
It happens.
What?
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, well, I guess you guys in music know that as well as anybody.
I was just thinking of that when you said the budgets, and I think, boy, this record could have been so much more with more budget. It's true.
It's true. And Lugosi's 59. His salad days were the early 1930s when he was making horror movie classics. But the major studios have not quite turned their back on him yet, but they're moving in that direction. About the same time, I guess when he started filming Black Dragons, he had just finished filming The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. But he has a small role in that, and he's about to start shooting Ghost of Frankenstein again with Lon Chaney Jr., and he'll play Igor in that. But in a few years, the major studios will wash their hands of him, and he'll be making basically just one poverty row movie after another. And when World War II ends, even that dries up for him. So he's entering a difficult period of his life. This movie is made by Monogram Studios, which is one of the leaders on poverty row. I mean, they have leaders in terms of quantity. They just churn them out, and Lugosi will make 9 Monogram horror movies over the next few years for them during the war. And then the market just collapses when the war is over. Whatever demand there is for movies like that, they just reissue old movies. The leading man, the romantic lead, I should say, is an actor named Clayton Moore. Do you know who he is, Joe?
I do not. Do you, Anthony?
Lone Ranger?
Lone Ranger is absolutely right.
Anthony James wins.
Yeah. In this movie, Clayton Moore is 28 years old, and he is...
20? 20 years old?
28 years
28.
old. And he's been struggling to get out of B movies. His whole career has been in B movies, but shortly after this movie comes out, he will be drafted. So if you look at his film credits, he has Black Dragons in 1942, he has one or two others, and then he disappears for 3 years, and that's the war. And there's a lot of actors of his generation that you know, were I guess he thought he was on the upward swing. I don't think he was going to get out of B movies and poverty row movies no matter what he did, but whatever chance they thought they had at the big time was taken up by the war. And another actor in the same problem was George Reeves, who thought he was destined for big things, but then he went off to war. And they come back 3-4 years later, and they've got to restart their careers, and it wasn't easy for them. And of course, I gave those two names because these guys will become immortal through television. Clayton Moore is the Lone Ranger, and George Reeves is Superman. But had it not been for TV, we wouldn't remember these guys now.
We wouldn't. Tomorrow night, the movie is Black Dragons. It's on 9 o'clock on May 9th. Anything else in closing?
No, that's it. There's a lot more trivia, but I'll spare you that. So I will talk to you next week, Joe.
Thank you, Frank Delastrito.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Did you have fun, Anthony?
I did.
It's our little show.
It was a wonderful show.
And Frank's been really diligent about these movie reviews. So we've got a whole collection. He could put out a book. His book 4 could be all his reviews for WinCam.
Wow.
I mean, they're fascinating.
Wow.
He's really an expert, and he puts a lot of time into it.
Yeah.
He's down in Texas, but he's coming up here on the 26th. Again, I'll invite Richie and you, and I want to thank B-Cats, Richie Sarno. I want to thank WinCam, Dave Gauthier, Anthony Gamari for the movies. Joe LaRocca, thank you for directing. Marvelous job. Anthony James, directed by Joe LaRocca. Love it. That's Visual Radio. Reeling follows us. Views and opinions are mine and my guests and no one else's. And hope you had a fun time. Next week, we don't know. We might have a rerun, town meeting and all that. Good night.